COPTIS is an initiative that was created in 2014 to foster consensus and consistency among publishers, editors, funders, and data repositories, with the specific focus on data that are part of scholarly publications. It is intended to help data repositories collect them better and easier, more comprehensively, also helping authors to follow or to comply with policies for data deposition to repositories, and to work with the journals, help the journals and funding agencies, as well as the entire research community, doing all of these above things. And now I don't know why the slide went backwards. So the specific commitments that COPTIS has been working on over the years is to help everybody better understand, get a clearer picture of the landscape of Earth and space science community repositories, of the standards, specifically domain standards and metadata information that are used, promote any best practices with respect to metadata information and domain standards, promote clearly the data citation principles that were put forward through Force 11 and the Joint Declaration for Data Citation Principles, to promote the use of persistent identifiers. And then, as the title of this session says, is a big focus on workflows within the data repositories and within editorial management systems to ensure that processing of manuscripts and submission of data is actually synchronized, is integrated as much as possible. And then help researchers understand these workflows, comply with them through education and data management and training activities. COPTIS was, for a few years, really moved forward through an effort under the leadership of Shelley Stahl at AGU to enable FAIR data. And this was a 2-year project to basically implement and help making some of these procedures more concrete that COPTIS had initially been talking about. The project was really successfully ended with a commitment statement signed by many publishers, data repositories, organizations, and individuals. And in this commitment statement, both repositories and publishers really promised a lot of things. And I've left these lines in the commitment statement here intentionally small, just to show how many lines there actually are. So none of these, or very few of these things, can be achieved right away. There is an educational process. There is a lot of changes involved in workflows, but also in softwares that support the manuscript handling, that support data submission and data curation procedures, and so on. And while we're starting with the implementation of what came out of the Enabling Fair Data project, we learn about bumps in the road, obstacles, and so on. And I think we are now in a phase where we can really address some critical problems, obstacles, challenges that we encounter. And I'm showing here on this slide a statistics from the data repository EarthChem library that I'm actually heading, which demonstrates the impact of the implementation of the Enabling Fair Data results. We have seen a large jump in the number of submissions that start to overwhelm our resources. And we also realize where these workflows are not well aligned, where it's confusing to authors, where it's very hard for data curators to follow these procedures. We realize that there is, in some cases, a lack of guidance for editors, for the authors still, to follow practices and procedures. So this is just a demonstration of where we encounter some problems. And this is obviously a view of the data repositories. There are obviously similar challenges at the publishers. Following this, our last, no, that was the last but one COPTIS meetings was at the AGU fall meeting in 2019. And we discussed some of these topics, the pain points in implementing the FAIR data guidelines. And we also discussed again, how can COPTIS help researchers, editors, authors identify the right repositories for their data sets and decide which data repositories are right. There are multiple efforts to compile directories for repositories and criteria that make repositories trustworthy and recommended. At the winter meeting of ESIP in January of this year, the recommendation was to organize a COPTIS workshop in conjunction with the summer meeting 2020 and address the current challenges. Now, obviously, we can't have this workshop, but I think this session will help us define the next steps, how we can become more concrete. We have set up breakout groups for this session here today to identify what the next steps are in working together between repositories and the publishers. So this is what we intend to do today. Designing the next conversations between repositories and publishers. And the three themes will be to create a discipline-focused dialogue about workflows with editors, publishers, and repositories. And we specifically invite editors, publishers, and repositories to join that breakout. We want to work on developing a standard messaging across publishers, editors, and repositories to engage and educate researchers, both in the role of authors and in the role of editors and reviewers. And third, develop a consistent value proposition to funders that will enhance the support for repositories so they can actually scale their services to the requirements and expectations of trustworthy services and to the growing demands in data curation. So that was the last slide I have. And with that, I'm going to actually click on my escape and look at the agenda, or somebody help me with the agenda. Here we go. We're moving into the second part on perspectives on data publishing workflows. The first presentation that we have here is from Brooks Henson from the AGU, who is very familiar, obviously, with policies and procedures of publishers, but he is actually going to give an update on the OSTP request for criteria for data repositories, right, Brooks?
And yeah, and combine it with the second one on some activities AGU has been doing, and other publishers and some larger initiatives. So Kirsten, I need you to stop sharing your screen so I can share mine.
That is right. That used to be easier in the and I'm out of it. Okay, great.
And I should be in it. So thanks everybody. Yep. As Kirsten
Brooks,
said, yes.
We're seeing speaker view.
Okay, I need to switch views. How's that?
Yay, yay, that's okay. Right.
Perfect.
All right. Well, no, then you might see the slide that I'm having next, and that's not fair. So, so yeah, I just want to give a current state of publication, some activities. It'll be a little AGU focused, and I know other publishers are also working through some of those challenges that Kirsten highlighted. And I think one goal or one request from you all is we want to kind of find a way to share those that work so we can make it more productive. And certainly we're happy to, I'll just say up front, we're happy to share some of the things that we're working through. And I think some of the challenges, as I'll get to, really require us to work together as publishers and with the repository and funder community. So there were, just starting at a higher level, several of you know that OSTP was working on potentially, well, put out 2 RFIs and has been working on guidance both for open access for publications and potentially reducing the 12-month embargo that was implemented in the Obama administration by the Holder memos to less than that, potentially 0. As well as putting out an RFI for draft desirable characteristics of repositories for managing and sharing data resulting from federally funded research. And many of us in this room have responded to that. And the information I have is that OSTP is continuing to work and think about both of those initiatives. The second one in particular on desirable characteristics was, I think, getting at a larger issue and a larger challenge that we had identified in the COPDIS statement of commitment, which is more of a stable infrastructure for both domain and general repositories, not just in the US, but worldwide. And I think that remains a challenge. So in particular, I think we've been very interested in kind of how OSTP might move that along. But that's, that remains a large challenge. But in any case, if you're interested in seeing what everyone wrote, and I think each response is each collective response is well over 1,000 pages, the link is in there on the full set of responses from all the stakeholders from each of those RFIs. And as far as I know, and we were discussing this earlier yesterday, in fact, and a little bit today as well in some separate meetings, both of these are still kind of cogitating at OSTP. Just a note that these issues and also some international open access issues, both on data and content, will be discussed in a little forum that Chorus is running on July 30th. It's free if anyone wants to sign up for it. There's 2 panel discussions. The first panel discussion will be in the morning and include international issues on data and content sharing and open access. And then the second one will be a panel that I'm organizing or moderating that includes key funding agencies, specifically NIH, NSF, DOE, and NIST, but talking about the US federal landscape in the afternoon. So just to note that some key representatives from those agencies will be there. And if anyone's interested, it is free. The link is in the slide deck on how to register. And also guidance, part of this landscape on open access is preprints. And there was a meeting held in February before, or in late January before the travel restrictions hit in Cambridge, that was organized by ASAP Bio. And the preprints are interesting because they help researchers think about data best practices and leading practice is as early as earlier in the process, not as early, which would be data management plans or even before and preparing data management plans, but certainly before publication. And so ASAP Bio brought many of the preprint stakeholders together across most of the sciences. It was a little biomedical focused. But Archive was there. I represented Earth and Space Science Open Archive. Chem Archive was there. So a little bit also in the physical sciences. And we hope to come out with some common guidance about data availability statements and data transparency for preprint servers as a way of helping researchers think about and be aware of data curation and preservation issues earlier before submission as well. So that should be coming out soon. So let me go into a little bit more about what the publisher is doing, and first thank I think a number of people in this room, either directly or many behind the scenes, on helping AGU update its position statement on data, which was released I think at about September last year. Several of the people I saw on the participant list were directly involved on the committee that did this. And it took what, AGU's position statement, I think, was one of the first to call Earth and Space Science Data World Heritage. I think that extends even back to 1997. But what this position statement in particular did is extend that to the importance of really what we're talking about here, the broad cultural and infrastructure changes and funding changes that are needed to support and to meet this aspiration effectively. So we're guided by that, and hopefully that helps, serves as a larger landmark and statement of the importance of this for the community. So I'm going to focus a little bit on what publishers are doing. I think Dany's going to follow a little bit, focusing on bringing some of the repository community up to date. So one initiative is through STM. STM is a group that brings publishers together. And then again, this is aiming at implementing or following through on many of those aspirations in the data position statement, on but also trying to organize the publishing community to both share a link and cite data appropriately through the publication process. Obviously, we recognize that collaborations with both the funders and the repositories are key for this. So I'll talk a little bit about what AGU has been doing. Recently, to follow through on our part of the commitment statement, and as Kirsten said, this is a work in progress. And so one thing that we've done is just very recently, I think in July 1st, started requiring specific data availability statements and separating them out from the acknowledgements. So previously they were in the acknowledgements. And the idea is that we'll start collecting these and coding these so that they're a separate statement. We'd already asked for data to be taken out of the supplements and added into repositories, which is one of the effects of that Kirsten showed on the graph she showed about EarthChem, was kind of that mandate or guidance helped cause those increases at the repositories, and certainly kind of working through that with the repository community is a challenge, but let's call that a good challenge. It's what we wanted. And so one thing we've realized in conversations with our editors and researchers is the importance of having domain-specific guidance for this. So we have been working, one of the things that we've been doing is working on exactly that domain-specific guidance to supplement the repository finder tool. We are just about to roll out, or maybe rolled out today, some of that guidance for 4 of our journals, and many of our journals are mapped to our sections. And the goal will be to have this journal-specific guidance across all of our sections/journals that provides a little more specific guidance on which repositories are most relevant for the types of data for this particular journal or discipline. How do you reach them? What data needs to be deposited or should be deposited for that specific discipline? Is it all of the data? Is it a subset of the data? Is it the data products? How to organize that? And this has been developed working with the editors, repository community, and our publication staff on this. And we recognize that this is also a work in progress, and so the goal is to get this up and then continue to work with the repository and research community to refine it, and include other information like data management plans and so forth, links to data management plans that are also relevant or templates that are relevant for this community, et cetera. So we do hope that we can share these and work with other publishers to help provide, again, a common set of information and useful information for researchers, recognizing that researchers typically submit to multiple journals, and having some common set of information and instructions will be very useful. So, oops, sorry. Okay. We've also, Shelley in particular, has also been working on software citation, and indeed part of our guidance for certain journals. Some of our journals are entirely modeling journals, and so software citation is actually more important there than data citation. And Shelley in particular has been working with the Force 11 software citation implementation group, and again, we'll be starting to have, and they and we will be starting to have common guidelines out on software citation. And these are coming out very soon. We're also working to improve information on general repositories and provide, for those cases where, again, where a domain repository isn't available for certain types of data or isn't appropriate for a certain paper, how to access and use general repositories. And this is available as well recently, and this was an outcome of a recent NIH working group. Okay. And so just in the near future, kind of where we are is progressing through this. We're really trying to live up to the spirit of the commitment statement. As Kirsten said, it's a progress, but we feel we're making progress. We do want to share what we've learned and interact with all of you. And as Kirsten said, that specific workshop wasn't possible for this summer, but we hope soon to be able to do that or continue that sharing online. And we hope to develop from this webinars that we can use to both inform editors and researchers. So thank you. I'm happy to take questions. And depending on time, or do we want to go on to Dany? And I'll leave that up to, I think we have, from the schedule, we have a little bit of time, so I'm happy.
Yeah, from the schedule, I think we're fine. So if there are immediate questions, I think it would be good for people to.
And let me just see. And
there's also a very lively chat going on.
Yeah. So the slides are linked in the agenda. If there's any sharing problems, please let us know. There's a question on institutional repositories. Absolutely, I think those have to be part of the conversation and how we get and share domain knowledge appropriately through the institutional repositories, and how those are best used in this landscape is important.
I think it actually brings up the question again on sharing domain-specific standards. It was in one of my slides, was really this promoting domain-specific standards. And I think in order to include institutional repositories and more general purpose repositories, it would be good to at least have guidance and some level of templates and so on, metadata profiles available for people to comply as much as possible with community standards.
So I see one question on data in supplemental material versus repositories. So our goal and guidance, partly as a result of the Fair Data Initiative that Kirsten mentioned, is as much as possible to have the primary useful data into repositories. So that's what we're strongly encouraging and providing guidance on at AGU for a whole variety of reasons. So we are including, you know, that doesn't preclude supplements. They can be for protocols or expanded methodology in some cases. In some cases, some data products or summary information from the primary data can be included there. Figures, movies, and things like that. So it doesn't preclude supplements, but the goal is to put the primary data that would usually be deposited in repositories in that discipline into those repositories wherever possible, or as I mentioned, in some cases in general repositories where they can receive a data citation. So if there's redundant instances or views or slices through those data that are not appropriate in the paper, things like that, and they're not appropriate in the repository, things like that might go in the supplement. That's at least our guidance. But again, that's why we're working through some of this disciplinary specific guidance, because really the devil is in the discipline, so to speak, or the set of practices are the set of leading practices depend on, in some cases, on the data type and how those are stored.
Brooks?
Let me just add again a repository perspective here. We have been getting, in some cases, packages from authors that included all of those materials, figures, methods, and so on. And I think it's one of the things we need to clarify, or to at least provide better guidance, even to editors, is what should be submitted to the repository. There seems to be still a bit of confusion. And it makes it very difficult sometimes to process these submissions, because they are a mix of text and code and JPEGs and so on.
So a couple other questions. Is there a group working on conflicts and guidance between author guidelines and the COPTES? So I presume you mean the fair data guidelines. And so I think
This is Brian. What I'm talking about is where, when an author is submitting their data, their article, the electronic system for author submission kind of sidelines the data DOI. And what I found is that certain publishers, when you look at the online version of the article, you'll see the data set. But when you look at the PDF, if they don't actually cite it in their paper, the PDF has no link to the actual data in a repository.
Oh, so Brian, thank you for mentioning that, because I realized I had that in the talk and the links are there, and a major faux pas is I forgot to mention one key activity that we're working on. So yes, correctly, we are, the other thing that we're trying to work on with a number of players, Crossref, DataCite, Wiley right now, and other publishers, is correct data citation, including through our submission system and developing the practices and the infrastructure needed for that. So one, for every publisher on the list, there was a link in my slide deck to a Scholarly Kitchen article on how to mark up, including in the XML, data citations, so that once Crossref completes the event data work, those data citations will be counted, linked to the data set in DataCite, Citation, and so forth. So, so Brian, yes, we are working on those conflicts and those workflows, which include not just publishers, but many of the vendors that publishers use for copy editing and XML markup, as well as Crossref, DataCite, and others, to have that work well. So if you're a publisher here, it's really important that, and this is still work in progress, we find a common way to communicate with authors about how to cite data sets, but then also work with our vendors and partners to make sure that the tagging is correct all the way through, so that those data citations are counted. Just some of the things that we are finding is some of our vendors we're treating these as journal references, not recognizing the DOI and actually stripping out the DOI, so that all the hard work that we've done upstream is then lost. So that's just an example of maybe a disaster case that's happening. But as a result, many data citations aren't quite being treated properly. So that's something we're working very hard on. I think we're making some great progress, but a lot of the part of the publisher community is involved with that. So again, we're happy to share what we're learned with other publishers on that. The Scholarly Kitchen article, which links to a paper in Nature Scientific Data, or Nature Communications, that Helena Cousins and others authored on leading practices, was there. So thank you, Brian, for reminding me of that. And yes, it's not perfect yet, but we're trying to resolve those conflicts. Let's see what else was in questions. Link to general repository comparison chart. Shelley, is that available yet? Can we post that? If not, we'll circulate that.
She did already. She said
good.
it
Thank
might be
you.
available in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
Slightly
there was a question up farther in the chat.
So Dany, yes, there is a protocols repository as well.
Below that, I'm sorry, I'm just searching as well. So let's see, there's a question from R. Downs. Will there be a future where individual repositories do not have to register with individual journals to attract submissions, as this current practice is insufficient?
So we're actually at AGU, we're not calling registration, and I think we'd like to, but we do need an awareness. And the kind of where we came out of fair data would be, we're trying to, and I think publishers are trying to promote journals that can implement FAIR, or at least parts of FAIR, or on a path to FAIR. And I think, publishers, we feel we have some responsibility towards pointing authors to those repositories that are following leading practices. So, but it's not, certainly there's some journals, some of the nature journals have required registration. We're not requiring registration, but do want to ensure, I think it is, the publishers do feel some responsibility to, going back to even supplements, which is why supplements started at publishers, but through this better process of linking to repositories, that these are leading repositories. So I think we'd feel better if the community, set of communities develop this. And I think that's where we're working with RE3 Data and DataCite and RDA and ESEP and so forth, World Data Systems, to try to have the community help guide us. But we do want to, as publishers, I think, ensure that the data linked to our publications are well curated and preserved and available for long term.
Okay, I think we need to move on to Dany to stay on time.
Sure.
Dany, you share your screen?
I will. I want to see if I can, you guys bear with me, because I don't want Mark to call me out as a Zoom lackey. So bear with me here. I will just say, as I'm doing this, that there were a couple other comments and questions, but maybe we can get those addressed in the breakout as well. So hang on to your questions, Doug. Oops. I think there was one from Doug Schuster that we didn't get to, and there might have been one that just came in.
We'll try to answer as much as possible in the chat.
And you guys are seeing the wrong one, right?
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Darn it. All right, Mark, go ahead. Maybe you have to start it.
He's already called you a lackey in the chat.
Yeah, it was preemptive.
I thought he was trying to change his name.
All right. I'm not going to get there from here.
So Dany, if you click share screen, you can click, like you can choose a tool or pick an option, and you could just switch that into the presentation side of it.
Okay.
Share your screen and I can help you.
All right.
Okay.
So.
And then if you, before you go there, click on the slideshow one.
No,
Up, yeah. Next to animation.
Darn, I didn't even get past where Brooks got. You know what? It's all right. I'll wing it without.
It's okay. You can do this. Just go into full screen mode.
It's down right where she was going.
Right.
Yeah. Is
So
that
you're
okay?
going to the right place. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Perfect.
Yeah, I just don't get my notes. That's
All good.
okay. That's
All
all right.
good.
I was hoping to have notes too, but that's okay. So, sorry everyone, Zoom newbie, laggy. My name is Dany Kincaid. I am the director of the Biological and Chemical Oceanography Data Management Office, or BICODEMO. I'm also the outgoing assembly chair for the Council of Data Facilities, and I am proud to announce that Kirsten Leonard is the incoming chair. And so I am here to talk to you about activities in the data publishing or perspectives on the data publishing workflow, and also activities associated with repositories in that space lately. And I kind of want to start off by giving a little perspective or setting the tone here, and reminding everybody that over a century ago, there was an acknowledgement that data lived beyond one single hypothesis, and that it was important to consider the contribution that data makes to science, to the scholarly process. And so with that in mind, and we fast forward, you know, we're no less focused on data. And I would say that it's only grown over a century, and that you know, maybe the lens, the lens has shifted its focus a little onto entering the role of repositories to steward those data, and at scale, right? And so this has become, you know, this has become an issue. Data has become an issue for all stakeholders in the data landscape now. And to kind of grapple with this, we typically fall back on a data lifecycle to put it into context. And I would say that, and there are many data lifecycles, and I'm sure everybody's seen them. And the one on the left is the one BICODEMO happens to use, but they come in many flavors. But, you know, I would argue that they don't really serve the full life of data well, and they're one-dimensional, and they're too simple. And, you know, I had started to draw this sort of this cyclical or iterative life that data passes through, with feedback loops and multiple stakeholders and actors, and it's really complex. It's very complex. So the you know, I'd argue that the data lifecycle doesn't represent what we need, and so I want to draw your attention to this quote from from Saeed Chowdhury, who presented a keynote address at an NIH workshop this past February. It was excellent. The link is in that slide, and I encourage you all to just take a view of it if you haven't, if you weren't in attendance. But what he says, as he talked about mapping or creating a map of this data landscape, that he argued that the connection between data, that we have a publication-focused view of this work with data, the landscape with data, and the connection between data and the publication is often just mechanical, and it's just a one-way connection through a DOI, through a citation. And that the publication, the scholarly publication, is just the snapshot at the end of a journey, but that journey is much longer and richer. And so if we take this data connection publication centric view, we're losing a much broader landscape that encompasses many more stakeholders. And so, you know, the question here is well, the statement here is that we don't have a good picture of the data workflow that includes all of the stakeholders. And so meanwhile, even though we don't have this, we're putting a lot of effort and focus in efforts that have to deal with trying to grapple around better managing data in this workflow. But we're focused on our own sort of lanes, and there have been a lot of efforts in the last 5 to 7 years. The OSTP PAR, we've heard about a lot of these just in Brooks and Kirsten's talks. Coptis obviously came around in 2015. The repositories came in with a commitment statement there, or the backing statement. I can't remember exactly the term, but fair data principles came online in 2016. The enabling fair data project shortly after that, the care principles, and now the most recently are the data repository selection criteria that matter, again, already mentioned, and the OSTP desirable characteristics for repositories, and now most recently the trust principles. That's a lot of guidance, requirements, recommendations focused around data that all happen to include repositories as a main driver for the data management. And so in response, repositories have tried to keep up with all of this. We were present in the Enabling Fair Data workshop, and we developed the repository guidance tag, which developed guidance for researchers. We were Coptis signatories. We are part of the Enabling Fair Data Core Trust Seal cohort, which I will give my repository a shout out. We just got our certification. So kudos to the cohort. They were one of the reasons we got there so easily. And the Council of Data Facilities has hosted a series of webinars that was designed to get repositories and funders and publishers on a call in the same, all in the same place to kind of hash out some of these issues and ask some of these questions that we have. There is a upcoming CDF incubated repository shared infrastructure research coordination network proposal in the works, thanks to Kirsten Leonard. And then there's also work going on by the repositories within ESIP. There's a repository sustainability cluster that is working on the implementation of guidelines for demonstrating, guidelines to demonstrate fair and trust and care principles. And so this slide is hot off the presses from Margaret O'Brien, who I believe is co-chair of the Sustainability Data Management Cluster. There's a link up there if you want to talk to them more about that. But in general, there have been a lot of efforts, and repositories have been trying to keep up, these efforts are mainly aimed at relieving the burden of repositories trying to demonstrate all of these guidelines and principles and criteria. And so I guess the message I want to send is that all of these, whether it's funder policies by NSF or NOAA or NASA, whether it's federal mandates like the OSTP original PAR memo, whether it's journal specific requirements, or our own broader data management community encouraging certification, repository certification, or promoting the principles of trust and fair, or being a signatory for repositories, which are in the center of my little Venn diagram here. Those lead to expectations on all fronts. And there may be efforts to map them, but at the end of the day, it's a lot for repositories to absorb. So my question to this group in the breakouts is, how do we, for repositories, acknowledge that there's a lot coming down that means there's expectations on the repositories, some of which will have a hard time demonstrating those given current funding cycles and availability of funding in general. How do we stop the proliferation of these disparate expectations that don't seem to be coordinated? I would say that having repositories in the room, efforts like Coptis and making and enabling fair data that get all the stakeholders in the same room, right? To coin the streaming now very popular, in the room where it happens. Repositories need to be in the room where it happens. And I think that would go a long way. Some of these efforts have had repositories certainly on the author list, but others haven't. And as these new guidelines come out, I think we should consider the impacts on repositories. Some of them have been presented as communication tools, but ultimately almost all of them will be sort of twisted or perverted into an assessment tool. And that is assessing repository operations and quality and sustainability. There have been mapping going on already. And I would also say that it's great to know that there's a union of common overlap, but at the end of the day, repositories are still, focused with demonstrating the requirements of each individual set. And then the last thing I want to point out is that sustainability is in almost all of these, and yet it's sort of a negative feedback loop for the repositories to keep demonstrating sustainability while they're addressing the expectations of all these different efforts. And so, it seems like we could pull sustainability out and start addressing that with all the stakeholders.
Okay, that's a great,
great. That's it.
Yep, thanks, Dany. I think we don't have time for questions right now but it's, many of the questions that might have arisen will likely be discussed anyway in the breakouts that we're starting now. And Leslie Wyburn, who has been essential in organizing these 3 breakouts, is going to give a brief introduction to them. And I think Erin will be able to tell us all how to get into the different breakout rooms.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten. I guess, as we said, we wanted this to be starting the conversation. We're sensing that there are issues. Dany has nicely put the repository side for us. And so really we decided on 3 breakouts to start conversation. So depending on which one you're interested in or which one is really touching on your nerves at the moment, choose which one you want to go. So the first one is better aligning and engaging the repositories with editors and publishers. How can we get that conversation going? The second breakout is the issues with the researchers who are, in many cases, struggling to come to terms with this new idea of, no, you cannot have a supplement, you must have it in a repository. Oh, what's that? How do I do it? And then the third one is making funders aware of the issues. As Dany said, it's sustainability. I work with a repository in Australia, and we don't think the funders understand the issues of the repositories meeting publisher requirements. And so they're the 3 topics. And I suggest you go into each breakout room, depending on which one you want. And I'll now pass over to Erin to tell us how we get to where we want to go.
Yep. So
over to you, Erin.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. So in the participants list, if you hover over your name, there's a little more button. And if you click on that more, there's one option and it says rename. So if you could rename yourself with 1-, 2- or 3-, depending on if you want to go to the editor and publisher breakout, the repository breakout, or funders aware of issues breakout, then I will start assigning people. So if you can rename yourself, I will start assigning.
And I will help with the assignments as well.
Hey, can you remind us which ones, what the numbers match to? Can I just
editors and publishers is 1.
check?
Researchers is 2.
Perfect. Yep.
And 3 is about what is the message we need to get across to the funders about the extra workload that these requirements are creating.
And before everybody is leaving, there are Google Docs set up for each for each breakout. to take notes and be able to report out. So it would be good if some volunteers step up to be keeping an eye on the notes that they complete, and for somebody to step up and do a quick report out.
So
And the
I'm
titles
hoping,
of,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the titles of the breakout sessions, in case you missed it again, are in the document under the breakout sections header. There are 3 concurrent sections, etc. So you can find them there if you missed it.
And that's also where you get the link to the Google Doc, for which we hope you will record conversations. And then we've got a report back. And what we want to do is work out what are the next steps if we're going to continue these conversations. Where do we go to next, and who should be involved?
And I should maybe briefly mention in that context that we're hoping to have more regular meetings of Coptis to address these issues, and not just meetings at ESET winter and summer.
And so B. Thacher and Carrie Pullum, which groups do you guys want to go into? Oh, we still have a bunch of people who haven't.
Yeah, if everyone could just rename themselves with the 1, 2, or 3, that would be fantastic.
And actually, I'm going to open the rooms, and then I'll send the people who are not there yet. I will send you to a breakout room. We'll work on that. So you will join your room. And Kirsten or Leslie, can you remind me how long you wanted this breakout to be?
Just a second. We had intended it to be over at 7:16. I mean, so it's 20 minutes.
Okay.
Because we were late with the presentations.
Okay, so we'll go 18 minutes in the breakout. You'll have 1 minute when it closes. So you don't have to like immediately jump back, but you'll have a minute to wrap up your thoughts. And so we will go here first. And if you need help, there's a help in the breakout, and I can zip in to help you.
Hey, Erin.
Yep.
If people want to switch, are they allowed to switch?
Yes. If
How are you gonna catch people? Yeah.
I will. I'll help them switch.
Yeah, so message Erin or myself, Kai, and we will help you switch rooms if you want to.
Okay,
Got
so
it.
Kai,
Thanks, you
I need
guys.
to put you into a room first. So I'm just going to put you into one, and then you can help me switch.
Thanks.
Yep. Sarah Ramdeen, you need to make up your mind. Where do you want to go? I'm putting you in 2. You can come back. Dany. I'm moving you to 3. Okay, so Mike, Kevin, Elia, where do you want to go?
Everybody. This is engaging researchers, right?
Okay, 2. Mike wants to go to 2. Got it, Mike. I will zip you over to 2. Kevin or Elia, if you guys are around and want to go to a breakout, I'm happy to move you.
Just furniture.
Yeah, I'll move randomly.
Which, okay, I'm just going to surprise you then.
Yeah, the question that I would ask you
See you in a second.
maybe we could talk about for some amount of time is
Okay.
what elements of
And Kevin, if you want to be moved, just let me
standards, or
know.
what elements of metadata could potentially engage, or engage researchers or help researchers decide which
decide among potential repositories for their work? And that's an open question.
Hey, Aaron, sorry to bug you.
Not bugging at all. What's up, Kai?
If you're in the middle of something, but I'm unable to actually help assign people breakout rooms.
Okay.
I know you managed to take care of everything, but just for future sessions, if I have to do this.
No, I knew that you weren't going to be able to assign to the beginning. I wonder though now if you can move people around. Don't try to move anybody, but I think that if you now click on that more, and you should see the breakouts.
I'm not in participants.
Click on the Zoom toolbar.
I agree that incentives are important, but I guess my question would be.
And there's like a dot, dot, dot.
Are there concepts?
Right before you see end or leave.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that there. Perhaps I'm no longer a co-host.
You are a co-host.
Oh, I am co-host. Okay.
Do you see like a resume and stop recording?
I do, yeah. And then I have a breakout rooms, and then just
click.
leave.
Yeah, click that breakout rooms.
All it says I can do is join breakout room.
Oh, you can't move. You don't see it like a sign next to
Yeah, when we did the
anybody's
training
name?
earlier, it was different.
That's weird. Okay. I'm not sure what's different about this one.
Okay.
You don't, when you hover over somebody's name in that breakout list.
Yeah, no, it's just the standard
you don't
chat.
see move to?
I can't, no, I can put them in waiting room, but that's it.
No, it's not in the participants list. It's in that
Okay.
breakout list where you would join other sessions.
The only thing, when I click the breakout rooms, the only thing I see is that you've been assigned to a breakout room, editors and publishers, and then join, a button to join.
Hover over someone else's name.
I don't see anyone else's name.
Oh, you don't see anybody. Will you take a screenshot of what you see?
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay, maybe I can.
You can put it in Slack to me.
Okay. Sure. Okay, sure.
Because you're supposed to have all the same privileges that I have. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're not seeing.
Okay. So let me just message this to you. Go. Okay. All right, that's what I just sent you that on Slack as a direct message.
Awesome. So weird. Did you ever join the breakout?
Yeah, I did when you started it.
Yeah.
I was sent there, and I tried to change people, and I wasn't able when I was like hovering over them.
Yeah, because it's weird because I could see the join, or like what I thought was that you had to go and join the breakout, and then that you could help do that. But anyway, I don't.
What domain are you in?
I don't know, but I'm not stressed about it. Do you want to go to a different breakout, or do you just?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I just like for future. Perhaps is it that you assigned me and then therefore I lost the privilege or something?
No, I think it's something's funny with our security settings on Zoom.
Okay. All right. Well, no problem. Then if you could just move me to 2 then, and then.
Okay.
Unless you want me in some other room, that's fine.
Nope. Either, wherever. I'm happy to have a little quiet time.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Sorry to bug you.
No. It's not bugging at all, Kai. Thanks for your help. Okay. How do I move you to 2? Kai. Move 2. Got it. Okay. Cool.
Cool. Thanks.
I'm just curious, what university are you at? Mhm. Another question, there are some in the agenda, there are 3 points. Not sure that they're actually relevant to this topic.
Hey, Heather. Right now, the group is in breakouts. And the breakouts were on making funders aware of issues, on how researchers and repositories work together, and on editors.
That last one.
That last one? Okay, perfect. They have about 6 more minutes, but I'm just going to go ahead and drop you in.
Drop me in. Thanks, son.
Okay. That was so funny about yelling at your kids.
I was telling them to be quiet.
Okay, you're going to repositories. Hey, Ruth. Welcome back.
Oh man, I was typing into the chat, and when I hit enter, it kicked me into the main room instead of letting me finish my
No.
chat. Oh well.
You can stick it if you remember. Just put it back in the. Just put it in the chat for everybody. Daniela, I didn't know that you snuck in here.
No, it told me to return.
Well, yeah, but I didn't see you on the list. Like, I wasn't reading for comprehension.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to grab the chat right now and just paste it in as our notes, if that's okay.
Anthony's here. Heather's back. Margaret's back.
It was a little bit disappointing because we were just in a really good conversation.
Well, that's good. I'm happy to put you back in those
you
groups.
just get yanked. If you
they're all here.
Just
Yeah.
yanked.
Right,
Cool. Welcome back, everybody.
Aaron, it sounds like others were complaining about the same problem we just had, which was the thing got cut short. So,
in my case, it got cut short just as I was trying to copy the chat.
Oh no.
Wah, wah, wah.
Now it's gone.
I think I understand the idea, though. It really puts a lot of pressure on you to make your comments in and get moving, but I don't think people are used to it.
No, but maybe a little more than 58-second warning.
Well, we could do up to 2 minutes, but that seemed like it was people weren't realizing that like when you get that 2-minute warning that you didn't like people are just coming right
wrapping
back.
up, not starting a new conversation.
Yeah.
That's right, Dany. But anyway, I mean, this is day 1 of our meeting. We're using Zoom because of the breakout feature. I'm glad you guys had good conversations and you liked being in the breakout. So great.
So maybe we get with a quick, we have 13 minutes for the report out. And I think for at least from my perspective, session 1 is Leslie to name the 4 bullets. I mean, we basically don't have much more than a minute per breakout group. Leslie?
For session 1,
Yep.
the key message was that the repositories are getting inconsistent guidelines from the publishers, and it's making it very hard for them to help researchers deposit their data. Publishers should inform the authors that they need to look to a way to submit their data before they publish the article. There's just too many people who are looking for the repository as they go to publish the paper, and it's causing pressure on the repositories. Another one was that you download data from a repository and an author makes modifications to that data. So what is the citable data set? Is it the one you got from the repository or the one that you've modified? And if it's the one you've modified and the data is fairly big, then do you store that revised version somewhere? Because that's pretty hard. So that's matching it back to what is in the repository, and that there's also, we need a central list that publishers could recommend as to which repositories are acceptable for archiving data from their journal. And the notes are there for everyone to look at.
Okay, moving on to group number 2. Anybody identified as the report out?
I would nominate Sarah Rendine if she's willing. If she's not, I'll do it.
Hey, I don't think I got the full scope of the conversation because I was having some technical mic issues. So if you could do it.
We talked about several different things. I have too many tabs open. There we go. We talked about incentives, what sort of incentives to researchers there might be to do the work to get it into either an institutional repository or essentially into a non-generalist repository, and how to convince, how to talk to researchers about about why it might be important to keep it out. If there's no other choice, generalist repository might be the best place, but institutional repositories often can do a little bit better care and feeding in the long run, even if it's not perfect. We also talked about how to ensure that researchers understand the scope and limitations of different types of repositories, and how to engage researchers earlier in the process. And we were starting to get into a really good discussion about, what sorts of earlier education, what sorts of graduate student support, whether there needs to be a shift in mindset, kind of like a field methods course, whether or not that needs to be more about data management methods course sort of thing. Also need for data technicians. I'm not sure what I missed. I'm sure I missed something there. Anyone else in group 2 want to kind of jump in?
Seems you did it pretty comprehensively.
Okay then.
Great, thanks. And group number 3.
Well, I can throw some things out that we talked about, and then I'll let the group kind of kick me back into play if I went out left field here. So we started talking about how communicating, so the name of it was Better Connections with Funders on Issues that Repositories Face in the, well, it says meeting publisher requirements, but I don't think that was it. That it got changed into like addressing the data management workflow. And so we started talking about the biggest hurdle is trying to figure out what the best communication mechanism is to funders. There are different, you know, both federal and state and private funders, and it's all difficult. Engagement is difficult with everyone. We started talking about how to, if there's this sort of fuzzy anecdotal 5% rule for data management, how we could communicate that. That should be addressed. Talked about mechanisms for doing that, maybe an overhead rate on grants, but you know, we decided that wouldn't work. Maybe a line item. And then Doug Schuster from NCAR shared that NCAR has a determine your data management requirements for your proposal workflow, which also includes explicit costs at time of proposal versus costs at time of award closure. And so there's communications, there's interesting mechanisms for communicating to researchers. But I think we had a lot more, we sort of generated conversations about things that we still need, not necessarily things that are easy low-hanging fruit when it comes to dealing with funders. And I will step back and let somebody else from the group say anything they want. Seems like people are still typing notes in our group. They just don't give it up. It's good.
Good, good. The more the merrier, yeah.
Can we get the notes that are in the separate Google Docs? Can we get links to those into the main agenda?
They are in the main agenda. Ted, there's sort of a high overview agenda in the Kiko chat, and then if you just go down like half a page, it says full agenda with all the gory details, and there are links in there. I can probably move them up so that they're in the high overview agenda too. Let me know if you don't see them.
Yeah, I was looking down below, but I think I put in a link to that. Leslie put the links in the chat, but if we could get them into that agenda, that would be great.
Okay.
They are actually already combined. It's any comments on these outcomes of the breakout groups? So basically, I mean, what we're left with is really defining what the next steps should be, how and where Coptis can continue to foster the dialogue and actually advance solutions, I think. So for our summary, we would like to have 3 takeaways from this session. And any suggestions, what you considered could be entered into the notes at the bottom. We could thus make it, if I could encourage our participants to just put in one line what for them the takeaway is. We can then consolidate that and see what the 3 most mentioned aspects are.
This is Payne. There's one thing I'm just listening to everybody talking, and I wonder whether there are a lot of requirements or statements for repositories, and they are all good. There's a need for those requirements, but I'm wondering whether they are actually consensus among all stakeholders, including repositories, publishers, and researchers, to have a more integrated recommendations or requirements. Because sometimes requirements may come down that's not funded. It might be impose extra burden on researchers or repositories. And not to say that intention is not good, it's all good and needs to be done. But I guess the key might be what can be done now by everybody that will be achieve the best result for now.
I can say that as an educator and a data curator, having the Coptis materials to point to has been a big plus, because it's not necessarily coming from me, it's coming from a professional group. And so I can explain that it's important to have a data availability statement. It's important to cite your data within your article, because otherwise it might not be cited in the PDF version of the paper. Those kinds of things, it gives it more weight. So I really appreciate all the work everybody's done on that.
Great. I would encourage everybody to continue writing in this document, as we said before, because there's a lot of good stuff coming in right now. It's kind of hard to immediately get to the 3 takeaways. I think, many of the aspects we are fully aware of, that education is necessary, that we need better strategies for supporting the repositories. I see, primarily, the aspects of funding being addressed here in the bullets.
And it could be, Kirsten, that we just need to, maybe simmer on the notes a little bit and on the discussion. And 3 takeaways aren't emerging right this minute, but they might emerge over the course of the week. Right. I think we're probably all a little tired.
Yeah, it's been all right. You must be. Definitely.
I'm a little
but
tired.
Anyway, I just wanted to say again, and it is 5:30 now here, on the East Coast. Again, that we see that actually with the more virtual activities emerging out of the lack of in-person meetings, I think that we can use Coptis or work within Coptis on a more regular basis. That would allow us to dive deeper into some of these issues, rather than with the 20 minutes of breakout where there are limitations. So I think what we will try to do is come up with topics that could be nicely addressed in a virtual hour-long session or so. And we'll work with ESIP, I think, to figure out how to best do that, how other clusters and groups have run their meetings on a more regular basis. So with that, I just want to thank all the co-conveners. I want to thank all the participants who have been really active here and contributed. And last but not least, I didn't have a chance yet to say thank you to Aaron for all the fantastic work over so many years that has brought ESIP to where we are today. And and has given a home for Coptis in that respect. And if anyone of the other conveners would like to say something before we close the session down.
Before you close it, can someone grab the chat?
Is it not possible to save it?
I have, yeah.
So I'd like to also thank Erin for.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also want to say my comments may sound negative, but actually, no, I think all the work being done has been very important and helpful. And I'm just looking for a way to how to best implement them.
Yeah,
that's what we should be helping with.
Thank you from me to Erin, and thank you to Kirsten and Brooks who started CopDesk. And we really have to keep this going and work out what is the best way.
So
I'll echo Leslie.
Thanks, Erin. I think one of the takeaways also is how do we take the energy ideas input and really collectively as a group elevate them, because there's a lot of great conversations that we have, and it's a hard problem to address some of these, particularly the global infrastructure funding challenge that's not gone away. It was surfaced that we actually took that off the table at the first CopDesk meeting so we could get some of the other stuff done, just because it's obviously that we're still talking about it, and I think there's still an opportunity with some of the I think we've gained momentum for the years, and to take the next step and think about how to speak with a common voice to the larger to the larger stakeholders, which are the governments and the universities and the researchers. And I think that conversation is starting to happen. I've seen it. ARL had a meeting on data and data infrastructure. So the universities are starting to pay attention to this. And I think some of the global funders are starting to pay attention to this. Not that they haven't, but kind of at a more integrated level. And I think this group and this community and the energy that we have and has a voice in that. And let's ensure that that'll happen. So I think that's a hard takeaway, but I think we're starting to get ready for that conversation globally, and hope to see it through. And also, let me just thank Erin. We wouldn't be here without her. A lot of small steps and small acts, but big leadership role too. So thanks, Erin.
We're going to have to defer our toast and glass of bubbly to you to some better times. It will come. Okay, everybody, thanks again. And with that, I wish you another wonderful week, 2 weeks of ESIP sessions. Lots of good stuff to come still. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks so much, everybody.